Hey everyone, how y'all doing after Thanksgiving in the United States? You guys don't celebrate that over in Europe, do you, Robert?
Not really. I mean, in my case, actually, that's a bit different because I went to school in Buffalo. I spent a year in Buffalo at SUNY New York, and I still have some friends who were exchange students at the time, and we do celebrate Thanksgivings as a reunion kind of thing in that group.
And I've noticed, though, this is what's curious. Europe doesn't celebrate Thanksgiving. Obviously, it's an American holiday. Canada has it as well. But they do celebrate Black Friday.
Oh yes, I mean it's like all the big commercial things. They at some point get to Europe as well.
So that's interesting that they do celebrate Black Friday. But in the United States, Black Friday is, of course, associated with Thanksgiving. So that's where it comes from here. So I was always curious why they celebrate it. But it's like Amazon and Google and all those kind of places push it to make sales, of course.
Yeah, and I guess the buyers side, the European buyers, were just envious to see all the discounts in the U.S. and so it was introduced. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, KYNO had a sale, Black Friday sale.
Yes, yes, and then that went pretty well. Lots of new KYNO users and lots of people who updated and upgraded.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about the latest version, 1.7. You have some, I'm going to just mention a couple of the features. You can go over more. So one of the features, ProRes export on Windows. That's got to be major. I'm not sure how you did that. That's like black magic. And then you also had Final Cut Legacy Media Filter, which is very beneficial. So that comes up as incompatible media when you select Final Cut Pro, I noticed.
Yes, exactly.
So that was a very, very useful thing for Final Cut Pro users. A couple of the other things that I saw, metadata export as XML, then import to add to the matched files. Now I have a question about that. And the question is, what criteria does it use to match the file when it goes back to match? What does it use? File name? Does it use the length of the file? Does it use the resolution? What does it use to match that metadata back?
At the moment, it matches based on file path and file name.
Okay.
So it always tries to match the exact path. If that doesn't match, it's the file name. But what we changed in the algorithm for version 1.7 was that we allowed the match to work even if the file extension didn't match, because that's very handy for proxy workflows. Because if you export, say you have a rush of MXF files and you want to export the same directory structure as proxies for your PA to log on a separate drive, and then you hand the PA the drive with the identical folder structure, but you have MOV proxies,
okay,
much lower resolution and much lower bit rate, and then the PA can take that drive home and do all the logging in KYNO, and then essentially just send back an email with the XML file, and the editor can reconnect that to the original master files. So that's quite a nice workflow.
Okay, so exports. So you can collect. I'm a little confused. You can collect metadata from any file and then match it. But does the metadata I didn't know it had the file path name in it. I didn't realize that.
Yes, I mean we do store the last location where this file was when the metadata was added.
I see, the last location. So, gotcha.
Yeah. Yes.
So for people that don't know, when I talked to you last time, asking exactly what KYNO was for people that don't know, you described it as a filmmaker's toolkit, and I really like that because that makes a lot of sense to me. Is that still the way you describe it?
Yes, I mean, I do certain variations, not to repeat myself all the time, but Filmmaker's the toolkit describes it really well in 2 words. If you want to spend 2 or 3 sentences more, then I would say it's the tool that eliminates repetitive tasks and get obstacles out of the way from camera to edit, and thus saving you a lot of time. And it is more or less Swiss Army knife for all of these sometimes very tedious and time-consuming tasks that you have between camera and edit.
Right. And other people, and myself included, at one point was asking you about being a MAM, a media asset manager. Now, from what I understand, it's something that you might be looking at for the future. It's not a MAM now because it only works with connected media.
Yes, I mean, I think we covered this last time a bit. It's the definition of MAM is not very, very precise, or there is no officially accepted definition of MAM. So some people call KYNO a MAM, but most people associate the term MAM with a more database-oriented approach that, as you say, manages assets as opposed to files. So the files don't necessarily have to be there. So that's different in KYNO. And people associate it with more complex systems with permissions and groups and user kind of user management and these things. And that's all what KYNO not is at this point. KYNO offers a lot of the things that people look for in MAMs, especially in a production situation. You want to find files and filter files based on their metadata, based on things like frame rate, tags, markers, subclips, all those things that you also do in a MAM. So we have a lot of people who have actually used it to replace an existing MAM by just using their NAS or SAN solution, pointing KYNO to it and using the drill down function to flatten or to look at the storage solution in a flattened view and then apply filters. And they say for them, it works much better than a traditional MAM because it gets less in the way of a production workflow, because it's very direct. It feels more like, in many operations, it feels more direct than a database interface, because to many people it feels like a Finder that was built for media production.
It's like a Finder on steroids. It's so many things that it does. Let me see something here. Okay, so if like when I worked at the National Archives, we had a MAM. But I suspect that if you're always hooked up to the same RAIDs or storage every time you log in, then in that case, KYNO is like a MAM because it would always detect those things, right?
Yes, exactly.
And KYNO, if I'm not mistaken, does store some of that information in a database, but it's hidden in the application or something?
Yes, that's correct. We built what is called an index, which is just another term for a certain type of database that's specialized in a certain type of operation, like taking lots of data and building something that's called an index that is easier and quicker to search than the original data set. And that's what we do, but the location where the data is stored, the location that needs to be backed up and protected, where your information, where all your work is stored, that's just the file system. So if that database, that index, for example, should get deleted or corrupted, then no information is lost. That's just a matter of rebuilding it and waiting a bit until that rebuild operation is finished.
And then the other thing is, if I use KYNO on a drive and I disconnected that drive when I plug that drive back in later, does it retain some of the information that it already got on that drive for the media?
Yes.
So it does
Yes,
retain
it.
it. It's just not available until the drive's actually plugged in.
Yes, you're correct. We keep that indexed information in the local machines index. So next time you point KYNO to the drive, it will still be much faster than the first time. But of course, we don't know what has happened on the drive since then. So we do a rescan, but you don't start from scratch.
Right. So let's go over some of the new features of 1.7, the ones that I just touched on briefly. But go ahead, let's run down some of those new features.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the big things that we had already announced at NAB is the Frame.io integration.
Okay.
So that essentially gives you a very streamlined, simple, and fast, and for certain use cases, highly optimized workflow for contributing footage to Frame.io.
And another thing that you got one more thing with Frame.io. Now you have Michael Cioni.
Yes, and I listened to the podcast, and that was a really brilliant podcast. I learned a lot from it, and I'm excited where they're going. I'm absolutely impressed with what the Frame.io guys have achieved in so little time. I mean, it's the story of Frame.io is really like the blueprint for a successful media startup, and we know many of the guys, and we're very impressed with what they have built, the level of quality, how they understand workflows, and I mean the business side. You definitely heard the news with a new investment. It's just amazing. And when they recruited Michael Cioni and announced that they were going much further than they are going now with their focus now on approval workflows, and they will broaden their scope so much, and that's such an ambitious thing. And when Michael talked about how he thinks the production workflow would work 5 years, 7 years from now, that's a huge thing. I think if anyone can pull it off, then Frame.io. So we'll be watching that very closely.
Yes, absolutely. Somebody needs to make a Michael Cioni plugin. That's what they need to do. Get direct access to stuff he's doing. So he also is doing an album in Final Cut Pro in December. I don't know if you caught that part. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I did, and I was actually very surprised because, I mean, I'm not a big musician, but I do make a bit of music.
Right.
I haven't done that in a long time, but I just bought Logic Pro just a few months ago, and when he said that he produced and mixed an entire album in Final Cut Pro, I was like, okay, I need to see his workflow.
Right, I'm going to try to have him back on for that. Because I use both, but I definitely prefer Logic for audio. There's too many things that it does that Final Cut doesn't do. Yes, of course you can do things in Final Cut with audio, but a lot of them are workarounds to me, and I don't like working around if I don't have to. Plus, it's not, listen, Final Cut's not supposed to be a DAW. It's not supposed to be a DAW. It's a nonlinear editor for video and audio, but Logic is a dedicated digital audio workstation. There are two different categories of software. So there's things I never expect to see in Final Cut, but there's also, audio improvements is one of the things that people constantly want to see in a new version of Final Cut is improvements. As a matter of fact, Michael said it. I asked him as well. And he said he'd like to see a downstream mixer, or downstream mixer, both for audio and video. So that was interesting. I didn't think about video. So what else do we have in KYNO 1.7? Just came out.
Well, let me quickly say a few more things about the Frame.io integration, what its purpose is.
Okay.
The focus of the Frame.io integration in KYNO is really to get this process of, especially if you have a production, a fast turnaround production, like for example, more or less real-time social media production or news production, to get this process streamlined where you go through your footage that you have ingested from your camera media and then select the good shots and upload them to Frame.io and have an automated transcoding process. Or you can even have KYNO export selected ranges in the files on the fly while uploading to Frame.io. So if you, for example, you filmed an hour and a half of raw footage, and then you just need to pick those 5 to 10 minutes that the news editor needs to build their program, then you can do this in one very simple workflow. You just set your subclips in KYNO as KYNO users already know. Very simple, much like setting in and out points. And then you can set that entire rush up to Frame.io in a batch operation. You don't have to take care of anything. It's transcoded automatically. You can even apply a LUT on the fly. For example, if you contribute log footage and you just want to send an editable proxy to your Frame.io project. So that's really the focus: fast turnaround productions, VJs, things like that. And regarding other features, we have, I'm allowed to talk about other NLEs than Final Cut on this program?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. We have improved the Premiere integration as well. So there's full XMP support in the KYNO integration now. We have built a metadata round-tripping workflow that's available for Final Cut and Premiere Pro. So if you have logged markers in your project, for example, and you want to recover that information to have it in your stock archive, then you can, or to transfer it to other projects, then you can, in Final Cut, this is the most convenient one, you can drag and drop your entire event from Final Cut to KYNO and then import those metadata fields. And the same with Premiere Pro. There you have an XML export, and then you re-import this in KYNO. And we have improved the filtering quite a bit. There are, apart from the legacy filter that you already mentioned, you have a Boolean filtering, Boolean expressions, which is very powerful. Right. I don't know how much you use the text-based filter that we have in KYNO, because that's a very pragmatic but very powerful tool that which matches all file names and marker comments and subclip comments and essentially any text-based metadata. So you find things really, really quickly. It more or less acts like a full text search, and that has been extended to support Boolean approaches, Boolean expressions, that allows you to type something like drone and B-roll, and you find things with a much more powerful expression much more quickly this way. This is one of my personal favorites.
Right.
We have that's also a little feature, but I love it. Metadata copy and paste, which feels like copying and pasting effects in Final Cut. So you can, if you, for example, you have logged your master file and then someone transcodes another version of it. I mean, in KYNO, we already transfer markers and subclips and all that automatically when we transcode. But in some cases, someone might have produced a different version using a different software, and then you can just copy and paste this metadata between clips with essentially the same workflow that you do for applying attributes or effects in Final Cut from one clip to the other. We have improved the HEVC support. Because that format becomes more and more relevant in the filmmaking industry with more and more cameras producing it. So up until now, it was more or less a distribution format, but now you have drones and cameras like I think the new Canon ones produce HEVC. The Panasonic GH5, as far as I know, produces HEVC.
This GH5 sure
we
does.
did something.
Yep.
Yeah. So we implemented hardware acceleration on Mac. We implemented export on Mac and Windows for HEVC. And for the people working with LTO backup or cloud backup for that matter, we integrated Archiware, which is probably the most popular LTO archiving solution out there. So that's also for our more advanced premium users.
Right.
That has been an important new feature.
That's what I use now at the National Archives, Archiware. So let's go back to the one thing you talked about. Drag and drop the event into KYNO. I saw that on the demo for 1.7. That is really, really cool. So basically what you do is you have the Final Cut Pro window on one side of your screen showing your events, and then KYNO on the other side, and all you do is just take the events and drop it onto KYNO.
Exactly, yes.
That's very, very cool feature. I really, really like that one a lot. Now, the other thing about HEVC, which is H.265, so the GH5 does 5K HEVC. That's, years old. It's like 2 or 3 years old at this point. GH5, I mean. And you can do 6K anamorphic with that same frame because it's a 4x3 frame, not a 16x9 frame. So who knows what? So other cameras are coming out using that as well. I see a lot more adoption of it. Now the question is, how do you deal with 10-bit video? Because I've had problems with, some people have problems with that. Is that okay in KYNO, 10-bit video?
It works. We have tested, for example, 10-bit video. Oh, I'm sorry. I think it may even be the case that the 10-bit HEVC video support will only come with the 1.74 update, which is due probably next week.
Oh, is
because
it?
Because there was some footage that we ran into that wasn't supported. So I think the accurate answer would be kind of 1.73. That's the current version.
Okay.
Doesn't support 10-bit HEVC in the playback and transcoding. It does, but we fixed that, and the update that's coming out really, really soon. The thing is that depending on your computer, this may not be hardware accelerated, and so the playback performance will really depend on your hardware.
I see. So one of the things that I was pleasantly surprised, once again, so we went to the Creative Summit a couple weeks ago, and we were supposed to go and see the the new spaceship campus. We were supposed to go actually into it, and it got canceled the last couple of weeks before we went there. However, somebody posted online a live visit into the Apple spaceship campus. And I grabbed that video before it was taken down, because it was taken down. And it was WebM. And I couldn't get anything to play it except KYNO played it. That's how I watched it. KYNO played it. So I'm not sure exactly WebM. I don't know if that's old or some kind of a web codec, but I couldn't play it on anything. I couldn't find anything else to play it. But anyway, I have the video, and somebody did post a video of inside the spaceship campus. So,
yeah, I mean, we have support for some rather obscure codecs in KYNO. You can even watch medical ultrasound videos.
Really?
That people get when they have a baby. So
Wow.
the format support is really one of the core areas that we invest a lot of effort in.
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise. So I saw you last year at NAB. I expect to see you again this year, right? You'll be there again?
Absolutely. NAB is a must.
Yeah. So you can answer as much of this as you're allowed to. So the Apple team was there with different developers, meeting with people and back and forth. So I'm sure you met with those people. What kind of things do you discuss? Not specifics, but I mean in general. Are they interested in KYNO? Obviously, somehow with Final Cut Pro, integrating it more, or what kind of things do you guys discuss? I mean, not specifics, just.
The general direction usually is that the Apple team wants to know what we're up to, what we're building, especially what will add value to the Final Cut Pro ecosystem. So they're very interested in that. It's, of course, as as probably most of your listeners know, that they don't tell you secrets.
No.
They don't tell you what's coming next, and so we don't get that information that everyone is really eager to get, but they give us some hints of what directions might be useful for us to go. They are very, very helpful in offering support for making our lives easier. And for example, we do things like our ProRes support on Windows. These things start in these meetings we have, of course.
Right.
And it's. So I think most. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, most of the time, they get all the information and are very curious what we are doing, where we are going, and then they say where they can help us, or we ask them if they can help us in certain areas.
Sure.
That's.
Have you incorporated Blackmagic Raw yet into KYNO?
No, but that is going to be the lead feature in KYNO 1.8. That I can say here.
So I presume that's 2020, KYNO 8?
Yes. It's not realistic that we get it on the market this year, because it's essentially almost over with Christmas.
Sure, exactly.
Around the corner, but Blackmagic Raw support already works really well in the lab, so we're more or less done implementing the support, and we get a lot of demand for it. It's quite obvious that the cameras are very, very popular, and everyone struggles with those files, because the whole point of KYNO is not to have to switch between 5 different tools in your camera to edit workflow. And the situation that people used to have with formats like Panasonic P2, for example, where they needed a specific dedicated player, that situation now is more or less the same with Blackmagic Raw, because if you don't directly import it into Resolve, then you will use the Blackmagic player, which is more or less a proof of concept, simple software player. It's not a professional logging tool or even preview player. So yes, that's definitely coming, and we're trying to get KYNO 1.8 out the door as soon as possible in January.
Well, that's great, because that's one of the main features for Final Cut Pro users as well, is when Final Cut Pro is going to support support Blackmagic Raw. There's a lot of those cameras out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So KYNO 1.8 in 2020. Now, you probably can't say, but what about iPhones? I mean, the iPhone 11 is a fantastic camera. We just saw recently that the director of John Wick, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Did that snowball scene with it. Now, and people are saying, well, he had a big crew and lighting. Of course. Well, that's not the point. The point is the camera was replaced, not the whole production. So the iPhone 11 Pro, which I have, it's really a fantastic. I don't know how they do this in a phone. The quality is just up. They have 4 4K cameras in this thing. One front facing is 4K, and then the 3 back facing, all 3 of them are 4K cameras. So what about the possibility of KYNO supporting iPhones?
First of all, I have to say I just saw that clip, this snow brawl, was it?
Yeah, snow brawler, exactly.
That was the title. Yeah, that was so impressive, and I mean, it was first of all, it was a really, really nice clip, really nicely filmed, but the level of quality that they get out of an iPhone is insane.
It is. It absolutely is. I mean, combination of Apple, what Apple's done, plus they use probably Filmic Pro or another app, I'm not sure which they use, to get a higher data rate and things out of it. And the other thing is that we've talked in the past over the years about iPhone support, but there's millions of iPhone users, and I think if KYNO at some point supported iPhones, you would certainly get a few hundred of those.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense. One of the most difficult things making software is really making those decisions. You have limited resources in your team, and then sometimes features compete. Like, for example, in the case of Blackmagic Raw, people with Blackmagic design cameras cannot use KYNO for their workflow. People with iPhones have this inconvenience that they have to use a different tool to import it, but once they have the files on their drives, they can use the files. So for us, it's a tough decision. We're looking at it for every single release, but so far there was always something like, for example, the ProRes, now the Blackmagic Raw, but we'll definitely keep it on the list of things to consider for each new release, because as you say, it's especially with the iPhone 11 Pro,
absolutely.
It's now a professional filmmaking device.
It absolutely is. It's not that it wasn't before, because the films have been made with the iPhones, of course, but in the past. But now it's just ridiculous. And it doesn't replace the GH5, but it. Sometimes when I was going to take the GH5, now I'll just take my iPhone because it fills some of those mid-level things that I was using a GH5 for. Just like for the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit, I streamed like 12 hours, 13 hours from the Creative Summit, and I used to stream with one camera, and then I would record in high-quality 4K with the other camera. This time I didn't take the GH5. This time I took the iPhone 11 Pro Max to record all the 4K stuff, and it turned out fantastic. Now, I want Filmic Pro. This is another thing. Filmic Pro has to have they have an update coming out, and they can't come soon enough, because right now it takes 5 clicks to switch a camera in Filmic Pro on the iPhone 11. 5 clicks. And they know about it. They know it has to be fixed, but that's ridiculous. But I've texted, not texted them. On Twitter I brought that up, and they said it's a fair point that they're working on it. So very awkward. But the quality of Filmic Pro, I mean, you go from 20 megabits per second up to 100 or more as far as the data rate goes. They have some great things. Plus, they're the ones that Apple showed at WWDC you can record 2 cameras at once, simultaneously at once, with a forthcoming version of Filmic Pro. However, it's not 4K. It's 2 1080p's. That's one of the other things. They said that's an Apple restriction. Apple only allows that so far, so we'll see how that goes. So do you film yourself? Are you a filmer? Do you shoot?
Yes, but not as much as I like to. These days, I more or less shoot some B-roll or marketing material, or mostly B-roll for marketing material.
Okay.
I shoot, I edit. When KYNO, when the idea for KYNO was born, I was in the middle of short film projects. So
okay.
I have written screenplays, directed, done some special effects, some editing, some camera, but all on a very, very, very non-professional level, I have to admit. But still, I know the process. And my wife owns a production company, so I have the production workflows around me 24/7.
Okay, there you go. So I'm going to go through some of the FAQs. Do you have anything more to say about 1.7 at this point? I think we covered the features. I can only encourage anyone who's interested in proxy or dailies workflows, or more generally pragmatic collaboration workflows, to take a look at KYNO 1.7, because it's never been stronger in that area. It really, really solves some problems and saves a lot of time in these setups. But yeah, that's it. That's absolutely true. I mean, KYNO, I've had it for quite a while. I haven't updated to 1.7 yet, though. But I've had it for quite a while, and I've used it for all kinds of things. It's just amazing how many features that you guys have you guys have implemented in KYNO. And when people ask, about KYNO versus another MAM or something, sometimes it's hard to distinguish exactly what KYNO does. But I like when the last time we talked, you said it's a filmmaker's toolkit, and that works very, very well for a description, I think.
And it depends really on the requirements. I mean, we have vastly different workflows among our customers. I mean, first of all, the customers really vary extremely from, the production companies doing corporate video, wedding, TV, cinema. We have, for example, one US presidential campaign using it for organizing all the footage that they shoot at events. We have customers like sports leagues or cultural institutions, houses of worship, and there's so many different ways in which people use it. So that there is not really, when you choose a tool, you have to take a look at the circumstances where it will be used, at personal preferences.
Right.
And I think that there may be for certain things, there's always a tool that does the job better. I think one of the big pros of KYNO is, first of all, its versatility, because there's no such thing as the KYNO workflow. With the toolkit, you build your workflow in one out of 50 possible ways, or 10 to 20 possible ways. And then the other thing is that because it feels more like a file browser with an integrated player, it's easy enough to use for directors or PAs, people who don't have a software mindset. And we get a lot of individual users, or even companies or big broadcasters, who buy it exactly for that reason, because they say they have failed making their editorial stuff use more technical software, and they have no problem whatsoever to introduce them to KYNO and get them to use it. It's usually they just pick it up and use it. So that's I think that's one of the key points that makes it so accessible to that wide that wide range of different people in the filmmaking or more generally professional video business.
So one of the things that you talked about was identifying legacy media in Final Cut. So KYNO works with Catalina, I presume?
Yes.
Okay, so if Catalina and KYNO, if they find the legacy media, Catalina can't play it back, right?
Exactly.
But KYNO can.
But KYNO can.
Yes.
We ship our own codecs.
Oh, okay. And then, of course, if you have, this is perfect. This is a great feature for people that are worried about it. I'm not worried about it. I have backups of my older systems. But if you run across media that you need and you're on Catalina and Catalina can't run it, you can open this stuff up in KYNO and then export it as a compatible media, right? You can export it from KYNO?
Exactly. If you find your old DNX HD clips, for example, then you just open them in KYNO and you either transcode the entire clips to ProRes, or even if you just say you have lots of nice B-roll buried in long DNX HD legacy takes, then you just find that stuff, mark the subclip, and export that subclip in ProRes. So it's a very, very simple process.
It's a great feature. It's a great feature for people who are worried about that. I wasn't overly worried about it. I have older versions. I always update, I do a carbon copy clone of my OS and everything, freeze everything before I update. And I'm not planning on updating to Catalina until next spring, maybe. I mean, I didn't update to Mojave until last May after NAB, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm more or less the same. I'm always a bit careful with updates on my system were added. So I'm still working on Mojave myself.
I am too. So I'm going to check one thing. I keep checking to see if the Mac Pro's been released. What do you think about that Mac Pro? Are you going to get one?
We're definitely going to take a hard look at it, because we already have 2009 Mac Pro, which is about the most impressive computer that I've ever seen, because it still works so well. And I think they made just the right decision to come back to their original concept of the Mac Pro. And I think it will be a nice candidate for us as well.
Well, were you surprised when they announced the Mac Pro? The form factor, I mean?
Yes and no. I mean, the thing is, you can never expect what Apple does next.
Yeah,
they have done that so well that they have done so many things that no other company would dare to do. So I can't say anything surprises me when Apple does it anymore, because but let's say I was just happy because I like the concept. I think that it worked much better than the
2013
trash can. Form factor, and this modular, the modular setup. It's just so impressive with the old models. We just upgraded the GPU or the entire graphics unit.
Yep.
I think 2 years ago, and it's still quite a usable computer. It's 10 years old.
Yeah, I have an old cheese grater downstairs in my recording studio that I updated as far as I could, put a new SSD in, because my audio interface requires a PCIe slot, and the drivers are only 32 bits, so I won't be able to go with the new Mac Pro unless they update the drivers, and I doubt it. It's a Mode 2 interface. But I do 24. Mm-hmm. I do 24 in and out, both in and out, 24-bit up to whatever kilohertz I want. It does it blindfolded. It doesn't even break a sweat. So I'm going to keep that set up just to ingest audio, multi-track audio, and then I'm going to get a Mac Pro. I'm going to I'll be doing editing on the actual Mac Pro itself. But I was they say this coming out in December. Apple's funny because they choose some things to manage expectations, like the Mac Pro. They've told us it's coming out in December. They told us, and they've done that before. They told us WWDC is coming out in the fall. When the fall got here, then they said it's coming out in December, which everybody kind of guessed that's what was going to happen. But they choose some things to manage people's expectations, and other things they're more quiet about. Like, for example, Final Cut Pro 10.4 came out 2 years ago. 2 years ago, December. And a 2-year span between a full number update of Final Cut Pro is a long span, because some of the last 3 spans have been 14 months, 16 months, and 18 months. Now we're at 2 years between the versions, and there's no sighting of 1.5 yet. I mean, obviously they could drop it at any point, but it's looking more like 2020, maybe around NAB. Who knows? Because they skipped NAB last year as far as public appearance.
And I'm very curious where they're going with the next major release.
Yes, likewise. It's got to be big. The only other time that there was a greater than 2 year span between full number updates was 10.0 to 10.1. Now 10.0 to 10.1 had 9 updates. We're already at 7. We're at 10.4.7 between 4 and 5. And the other versions never got that high. I mean, the one version 3 to 4, was it? Or 2 to 3 was only 14 months. It was only 14 months between those two. So there's got to be something big coming. Who in the heck knows? I'm excited about it when it gets here.
Yeah, me too.
So does KYNO run... It doesn't run differently on different Macs, does it? There's no, it doesn't seem to be that CPU intensive or anything. So,
I think there are only subtle differences. For example, if you run it on very old Macs, then you will not have HEVC hardware acceleration because they didn't have the chips yet. But apart from that, it should run more or less the same on every Mac. And I mean, depending on the power of your machine, you will have faster indexing times, or let's say the resolution that you can play back. For example, if you play back Red Raw R3D natively in KYNO, which KYNO supports since version 1.6, then you will have a different resolution that you can play back in real time. And we have a resolution selector in the player, so people typically play back at 1/4 the resolution or 1/8 of the resolution when they preview 8K red footage, but the more powerful your machine, the higher you can go with that resolution, for example.
Okay. So one of the things that I keep seeing with Frame.io and KYNO as well is the use of proxy files with Final Cut Pro 10. So Final Cut Pro 10 can make its own proxy files, but they're always 1/4. It's a fixed 1/4 resolution. So if I'm doing 4K, I get a 1080p proxy file, which I don't necessarily want. I like to go to 720. So if you guys, either Frame.io or yourself, if you actually make proxy files, I'm not sure how you link them back up to the Final Cut Pro database.
We haven't done anything in that direction regarding exchanging the proxies in the database, because I don't think that's something that's supported by Apple. What people do, however, is more or less the manual proxy workflow, which means relinking files. With after starting that project with pre-generated or proxy files generated outside of Final Cut, then later relink to the master files. And that's something that KYNO definitely is very good at. and we will stay in touch with people applying those workflows to tweak here and there to make that as smooth as we can. Because it, as you said, the proxy generation in Final Cut definitely has its limitations, and many people we know run into those limitations and improvise and do their own proxy workflows. And some of them use KYNO on those workflows. And we definitely want to be one of the tools that is useful for those workflows, because so many people use them.
Yeah, I mean, just instead of using ProRes RAW proxies, I mean ProRes proxy, I like to use an H.264 for a proxy at a lower resolution for a much smaller footprint. I mean, you can't do that now with Final Cut. I mean, you can, like you said, with manual workarounds, which I started doing that years ago, but I stopped. It was just constantly a pain. So one of the things I don't know, are you supporting ProRes RAW? We talked about Blackmagic RAW forthcoming, but what about ProRes RAW?
The only thing I'm allowed to say is we definitely want to support ProRes RAW.
Okay.
It's very, very high on our priority list.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So that's
as much as I can say.
That's fine. That's fine. So 1.7.3 came out on November the 17th, and you said there most likely won't be another update this year because of holidays and all, but the next one will be 1.7.4, obviously.
Well, yes, that's more of a maintenance release.
Okay.
And 1.8 is a major new release with new features. It's a feature release.
So
1.74 will be, yeah.
I'd say 1.8, will it be out before NAB?
Yes, definitely. We definitely want to launch Blackmagic RAW. If nothing goes wrong, we want to launch that in January.
Okay, good. That's fantastic. And then you'll probably have something new for NAB as well, right?
Yes. So we plan the releases in parallel. So we have more things that I cannot talk about yet.
Okay.
On the roadmap, but that's and those things are a bit in motion. That depends on. It's a very dynamic industry, and sometimes it depends on user feedback. Sometimes it depends on concrete partnerships. So I cannot really say much about 1.9, but we already have a number of ideas.
So can you say if 1.9 will be ready for NAB?
We're definitely planning to have it ready by NAB. But
great.
Whether that will be a public beta or the finished product, I cannot say. We'll definitely demo 1.9 features at NAB.
Fantastic. So NAB is starting on Saturday night this year.
Yeah.
So here's a question. This is not for you specifically, but Blackmagic usually has their big show Monday morning, first thing. Are they going to switch it to Sunday morning? It doesn't seem like they should.
I have no idea.
It still seems like they might still do Monday morning, even though they switched back a day. So Saturday nights I guess Saturday during the day they're having sessions too, but the actual NAB starts on Sunday. The show floor opens up, but I think it starts late. I don't think it's 10 o'clock. I think it's 11 or 12, and then it goes to 4 or something for Sunday, and then Monday's the normal 10 to 5 or whatever. And then they're closing it on Wednesday this year, of course, instead of Thursday, because they shifted everything back. So, well, that'd be good. I'll get to see you then again.
Yeah. Let's definitely do that. And I apologize, but I think
you have to go.
We have to.
Yep.
We have to wrap up. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna stay on for a couple more minutes, but I sure thank you, Robert, for stopping on. Everybody, check out KYNO Less Pain Software, lesspain.software. Is that what it is?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a weird domain name, but people are getting used to it.
Well,
now.
you just search for KYNO, it comes right up.
Yes.
All right,
Exactly.
Robert. Thank you very much for stopping by.
Thank you so much, and looking forward to seeing you at NAB. And
Absolutely.
we'll be in touch before that.
I definitely will be stopping by. Thank you.
All right.
All right, everyone. So we're back here. I'm just going to talk about a few things. So Gert says, bye, Robert. So we've been talking about the summit and things, and what do you guys expect in 2020 from Final Cut Pro? I mean, obviously 1.5 will be coming. It's not going to extend past 2 years. I mean, it's already at 2 years right now. So we already know we didn't get there was no update around the summit, zero update from Final Cut from the Pro Apps team, which was unusual because in years past, that was one of the main things that always happened. But so 1.5, what are you expecting in 1.5 going forward? I expect, not obviously, but I think it'll be out in 2020. It's already 2 years between major updates. What do you guys think? Gert says 10.5 with the Mac Pro. Well, 10.4.7 was the update specifically for the Mac Pro, but listen, Apple, if they release the Mac Pro and a new version of Final Cut, that'll be fantastic. That'll be fantastic. The thing about tying Final Cut to the Mac Pro is this. The Final Cut Pro editors that are going to buy a Mac Pro is small. It's not going to be 20%. I doubt it. I'd be surprised if it's even 10%. So Final Cut Pro updates have to cater to the majority of Final Cut Pro users. They can't just cater to people who buy a Mac Pro. Even though I'm going to buy a Mac Pro, I'm going to buy one, I still feel that the Final Cut Pro updates should cater to the whole crowd, obviously. But anyway, let me see what we have here. This is Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live. If you guys stop over at FCPRadio.com, you can get the latest edition of Final Cut Pro Radio. We put out 2 editions talking about the Creative Summit, what happened at the Creative Summit, both from inside and outside of it. You can also, obviously right now, this is youtube.com, Richard Taylor TV. You can check that out. If you want to join our group, facebook.com/groups/Final Cut Pro Radio, Twitter, Richard Taylor TV, all these neat places. But until the next time we come back on Final Cut Pro Radio Live, if I don't talk to you before the holidays, I probably will. We'll probably have another version of this coming up. We'll get some people together to celebrate Final Cut Pro for the last year, and we'll celebrate Christmas and holidays. But anyway, this is Richard Taylor signing off.